Let's get it going on the Locked On NBA crossover show between the Locked On Thunder podcast and the Locked On Grizzlies podcast as we get you set for this round one playoff series. I'm Rylan, that's Joe. Joe, finally, we know the playoffs. It's going to be the Thunder and Grizzlies. It took a whole week to get to what should have happened from the word go Sunday, but that's the NBA play-in tournament for you. How are you feeling after your Grizz got the win over Dallas and looked really good doing it on Friday?
A sense of relief. Again, people forget that the Grizzlies were the number 2 seed just 2 months ago, right? So you could pretty easily argue that the two most disappointing teams in the Western Conference to close out the season were the Dallas Mavericks and the Memphis Grizzlies, the two squads that played on Friday night. That was more what you would expect, right? That was the Jaren Jackson Jr. that we saw a majority of the season, the one that's a tweener all-NBA player. That was the John Morant, the explosive dunk, where he dunked on his own teammate, Santi Aldama. That was the John Morant that you would expect to see, the Desmond Bane that you would expect to see, turnovers and all, unfortunately. That's also kind of common with Bane as of late. So they did what they were supposed to do. The Mavericks were very broken. Anthony Davis was the best player on the court between both teams, but he didn't really have much help between that. And Memphis had the second, third, fourth, fifth best players, and they were able to win the game. And now here we are. A team that was the 2 seed just a couple of months ago is now the 8 seed, taking on arguably the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, this is going to be a very fun matchup. I think it has like the star power that you would want. I mean, you have Jaren, you have Bane, you have Ja, then you have the Thunder with Shea and J-Dub and Chet. But first of all, how have you seen this team recover from firing Taylor Jenkins like in such short order? Obviously, the 5-second violation Tuesday is going to get talked about a ton, but outside of that one bad moment, overall, how has this team responded to that?
I think it's, to be honest with you, I struggle with seeing the team, the end result where they currently are, I think is exactly how it would have happened if Taylor Jenkins was still there. I think they would literally almost game for game. Maybe they win one or lose a different one or something like that. But I think they go 4-5 to close the regular season. I think they're the 8 seed. I think they lose to the Warriors and then they beat the Mavericks. I think that all happens the exact same way. But the way that they happen would be different. It would be more of a concurrent situation where Isolo clearly has a value on Zach Edey that Taylor Jenkins did not have. And I do think that's an X factor going into this series, is the way that Memphis uses Edey, the Thunder have not seen. This Zach Edey, they have not dealt with yet. Now, that may not matter. The Thunder, again, one of the best teams in the NBA. Lots of folks picking them to sweep Memphis. I think OKC is a 13-point favorite in game one. All of those things make logical sense. The only thing that gives me pause, not that the Grizzlies are going to upset the Thunder in 7 games, but to make game one a little bit closer than perhaps people think it will be, aside from the fact that OKC has been off for a week, is the reality that Memphis has a guy in Zach Edey that you have to game plan for now. How are you going to attack him? There's flaws to Zach. He's big, and I wouldn't call him a plotting plotter like Matt Moore does, but he does have the ability to get picked on in the pick and roll in particular. SGA finding those matchups, that's a lock. That's going to try to happen. But OKC has to deal with a 7'4", 290-pound guy on the offensive boards, and they have to deal with him on the offensive end. And as a screener, he is being used differently by Isolo than he was by Jenkins. And that's the biggest difference, is that Ja has looked more comfortable, more pick and roll, makes sense. Even though Ja is not the best isolation player in history, he's just a more rhythm player when he's in that pick and roll system. But the biggest change has been Edey, and that is going to be something that the Thunder are going to have to respond to. Again, I don't think it makes the difference of, OKC in 4 or 5 or Memphis in 7, but I do think it's going to make, this game's closer than we thought it would be, at least in game one. I think that's possible because of the Edey impact and the way, especially that he played against the Mavericks. You got to remember, the Mavericks are a big front court, right? They've got AD and they've got Gafford and they've got Lively. Lively didn't score in the game against the Grizzlies. So I think that you underestimate Edey in particular at your own peril.
Yeah, Edey, I mean, he's going to for sure dominate on the glass. And then from there, you're just wondering about the foul trouble he can get into. You're wondering about him holding on to the ball once he gets those rebounds.
Absolutely.
And efficiently putting the ball back in. But he's capable for sure. And Memphis should absolutely – I think no matter how good or bad he plays, Memphis should absolutely play Zach Edey as much as you can in every single game, just because the Thunder are like minus 4,000 to win this series. Everybody expects the Thunder to win this series. You can get a ton of value out of just playing Zach Edey through thick and thin in this series, and hopefully for Zach Edey personally, he has a lot of thick in this series, and he's able to have some success. But nonetheless, the most important thing for a team who is not like really trying to win a championship this year, it'd be like one of the biggest upsets in NBA history to win this series, would be to get him some big time minutes on a big time stage and learn from what it takes to play in the playoffs at his position and at his skill set, which is different than what we typically see in the modern NBA, but it's not impossible to make that skill set a very valuable one in the modern NBA still. But Joe, I'm in love with another Memphis Grizzly, Scottie Pippen Jr. and his defense. And I think that his defense was special against Steph Curry, and it's going to be wiped away by the point column at the end, but it shouldn't be, because he really made Steph's life hard. Steph's just Steph, and like he just does stuff that's unthinkable. But you look at Scottie Pippen, how has he been at scaling up to defend bigger players? Because I think he's one of Memphis's better defenders in their rotation, and the Thunder have size at all their positions, so they're going to have the size advantage over Scottie. Can he range up and defend a Shea or a J-Dub or someone of that ilk?
He's going to have to, because of the injury to Jalen Wells and because of the self-inflicted wounds. And again, this isn't Locked On Grizzlies. We could argue, Marcus Smart being traded. Should he have been? Should he not have been? Same thing with Jake LaRavia. The Wells injury is what really hurts the Grizzlies, because he was their best point of attack defender, combining size with ability. Pippen Jr. has the ability. He doesn't have the size. And that's going to be the interesting piece. He's capable. Is he capable of doing it for a 7-game series? Probably not. The way that they need him to do it to beat the Thunder, that is going to be a tall task for anybody, much less a guy that was on a 2-way contract just a year or so ago. I think that he brings something to Memphis in that he allows for Bane and Ja to worry about other defensive perimeter players. SGA is going to be guarded by Pippen Jr. That's going to happen. Spoiler alert. That's going to be how this series starts. And SGA might cook and barbecue chicken. Like, he's an MVP candidate, probably the MVP for a reason. But that's going to be the matchup, and that's going to be the physicality that Pippen is going to bring. Now, SGA can counter with that. Obviously, he's one of the best foul drawing players in the NBA. That's a skill in and of itself. It's not meant as an insult. He understands how to use his body, getting to the rim, those sorts of things. That is going to be the challenge for Pippen Jr. Is he able to stay in front of him, make him earn it, nothing clean, being aggressive, getting a feel for how the officials are calling the game early, how he can use his hands a little bit more, maybe be a little bit more aggressive off ball, trying to tire him out, because obviously SGA is a phenomenal defender as well. The more that you can make him work on both ends of the floor, the better chance the Grizzlies have. I think Pippen Jr. has found himself as the Grizzlies' best option, but that means the Memphis backcourt is small, right? That means that means Bane is essentially your small forward. And as you mentioned earlier, OKC is pretty big with their perimeter players. So that's going to be a matchup that the Thunder can exploit probably.
Yeah, Scottie's defense was my X factor in this series last night when we finally found out this matchup. I'm very excited to see how he handles this series, but I think that he should not be overlooked just because of his size. He's that talented of a defender. Joe, coming up, I have one more question for you, then you can pepper me with questions about the Thunder.
Sure.
And we can get everybody set for this playoff series. But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at Upwork, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, and design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives the business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web design, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can have cost-effective growth instead of hiring full-time. Upwork lets you find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business effectively. Visit Upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with your top-tier talent and grow your business today. Also want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Monarch Money. Go check out Monarch Money today, because I love Monarch Money, and you will too. Because if you've ever checked your bank account, and wondered where did all your money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO and gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. And that all-in-one convenience is what I love the most. Instead of juggling through multiple apps, you can get Monarch and use it to check your finances, track your spending, and plan your long-term goals. Take control of your finances at Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We're back on the Locked On Thunder, Locked On Grizzlies crossover show. Joe, let me into some insight. Let the Oklahoma City part of this crossover on some insight. We've hinted around it at our roundtables, but you haven't gotten to get your full piece in, I feel like, on those roundtables for one reason or another. How is Memphis as a fan base, just the vibe around John Morant? Once it was viewed as like Ja versus Shea, now Shea's going to go win an MVP, and we'll see where John Morant lands. But again, at the roundtables, we've had little conversations about hinting at maybe like his long-term futures in question. But where does Memphis still see John Morant as an individual player and as a long-term part of this team?
John Morant is absolutely a long-term part of this team. Any questions about his long-term future is ridiculous and just further drives home the point that very few people actually pay attention to the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja is somebody that a vast majority of the frustration around him with his off-court escapades and all of the issues that he had and the gun fingers and all that sort of stuff, that is a national issue. That is something that national media focuses in on and talks about and says, oh, maybe he's doing this because he's not happy. You won't hear that locally. There has been very little, if any, probably more so very little, blowback on Ja for anything that has happened this year. It has been almost unanimous support of him and how ridiculous it was that anybody would think that it was that big of a deal for him to do this exact same celebration that half the NBA does. It is absurd. And to try to put the context of Morant's brandishing of weapons on social media to that movement when there are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds doing the exact same thing because they see Dalton Connect do it next to his good buddy Austin AR-15 Reeves is completely asinine. It's ridiculous. It defies logic. Nobody has been harder on Morant 2 years ago than me. It was ridiculously inappropriate at the very best, dangerous at worst for him to do the things that he did, and I think he deserved every game he was suspended. The stuff that's happened this year has been utterly absurd, and I think that he has found a home in Memphis. He knows that he is supported there. I think that he has the talent and the ability to be an all-NBA player when he's healthy. That has been the biggest question. If you want to talk about Memphis and their future around John Morant, it has nothing to do with gun fingers. It has more so to do with, can he stay on the court in terms of being healthy? He rolled his ankle on Tuesday, and it was concerned that he wouldn't be able to play against the Mavericks on Friday. So if there is issues with fans in Memphis and Ja, it's his inability to stay on the court health-wise. When he's on the court and when he's competitive, the guy that played in the first quarter against the Dallas Mavericks, I refuse to believe there's 10 people in the NBA better than him. SGA is one of them. I will absolutely admit to that. But I refuse to believe that outside of that dude and maybe 6 or 7 others, that there are more than 10 people that are better at basketball in the world than John Morant when he plays the way he did against Dallas in that first quarter. And that was on a bum leg. So if they can find a way to keep him healthy, that's the key. I think he's going to be in Memphis for a long time.
It's going to be fun to watch this series, Joe. I'm ready to enter the hot seat. What do you got for me on Locked On Thunder, Locked On Grizzlies?
Well, we talked about Edey a little bit earlier. Hartenstein is obviously a little more of a traditional big. I'm curious how the Holmgren versus Edey matchup may happen, if it happens at all, right? Because I know when Chet is there, he's usually more of the 4 than the 5. I get a kick out of the visual that's going to happen of the 7'4", 290-pound, almost 300-pound Edey against Chet. How is he going to handle that? Obviously, Chet has the athleticism advantage. But, that's going to be one of the more fun matchups in this first round is how the Thunder and Holmgren in particular deals with the size of Edey now that he is more of a priority in what Memphis is doing with Isolo as the head coach.
Yeah, I think that one way they're going to do it is they're probably just going to lean heavily into their double big lineup and make Hartenstein have that assignment and then use the mobility and the athleticism of Chet on Jaren Jackson Jr. But there are going to be instances where just naturally through the course of a game, Chet will wind up on Edey. And Chet will be very aggressive. Chet will be very competitive and try to go for every single block that Edey tries to put up there, which might not be great because like he's capable. He's an elite shot blocker, but Chet is one of these players that has that competitiveness to him that sometimes might get him in harm's way. Where if you go and compete for a block on Edey and then you foul him, and now you've got two quick ones that you've wasted on Zach Edey in a play that maybe you realistically didn't have a chance to block anyway. You probably should just let him have it. Then it can change a game with foul trouble early. So I think that it'll happen some. I think that his best opportunities against Edey would be in recovery. Like, if you heavily run like a Ja and Edey pick and roll, and Ihart gets caught in between Ja and Edey, and then Chet comes down from the corner and is able to block Edey from behind. I think that if you can get Edey post-ups onto Holmgren would be able to, wall up physically in the sense of just putting his hands in Edey's face and hope that that's enough to make a miss. And in his rookie year, it probably will be enough to make Edey miss. I think that there also will be some plays where Edey's able to kind of roll off that shoulder and create space and be able to slam it at the rim. So ultimately, I think that Chet would be the number 2 guy on Edey, not the number 1 guy on Edey, but it would still be very fun to watch.
And then my last one would be the Grizzlies have a habit, both under Isolo and Jenkins, of daring guys to shoot threes. Now, one of the great things about the Thunder is they have lots of dudes that can shoot threes. But for Grizzlies fans getting ready for Grizzlies Thunder, if there was one guy in the starting 5 or in a rotation for Oklahoma City that Memphis can just go ahead and assume that is going to get the disrespect of being dared to shoot the three. I mean, you probably watched the game on Tuesday, at least against the Warriors. They did it to Jimmy Butler. So they're gonna do it to somebody. Who do you think might be the focal point of that early structure, and will Memphis pay for that?
They should do it to the Thunder, and they were really brazen in doing it to the Warriors with Jimmy Butler. I don't think that you can do it to Shea or to J-Dub,
right?
But literally everybody else, like, because J-Dub is sneaky, a really good 3-point shooter, and then Shea's elevated his 3-point shot to a whole new level this season. But literally everybody else, you can just pick whoever you want to ignore if you're the Grizzlies, and maybe you just continuously change it if you're the Grizzlies. Of, okay, tonight we're going to just leave open Cason Wallace. Then the next game, let's leave open Aaron Wiggins. The next game, let's leave open Lou Dort, and just see what that does to the mental side of things. Because the one thing that you can still question about this Thunder team, for as great as they've been and for as dominant as they've been, is how are their role players going to shoot in the big moments. Now, all those guys are capable shooters, from Wiggins to Cason to Lou. Lou's the best 3-point shooter in this team statistically. Like, all those guys are really good 3-point shooters. There's just something different about the playoffs, and all of them have a streakiness to them. Alex Caruso has a streakiness to him. Isaiah Joe even has a very streakiness to him, and they're streaky within games. They're streaky, especially game to game. So I think that your best bet is going to end up being to try to pack the paint in and blitz Shea and make other guys hit threes around him, and it's going to either work or it won't, which sounds very simple, but just to say, like, just like the Warriors didn't have besides Steph, you don't want to leave Steph open, but if you left Pods open, or if you left Jimmy Butler open, not that those guys were bad players, but you felt okay about it. This Thunder team has to prove to you that they can't be left open, and so far in the postseason, they have not proven that yet, but they all are very capable of doing so. I would say if you had to just pick one, if you just said, well, what if they all translated to the postseason from their regular season like numbers, I would say that you'd probably pick Isaiah Joe to not be left open, along with Shea and J-Dub, and I would say don't even leave open Dort in the sense of wide open. You can give him a little bit of space just because he isn't the best 3-point shooter in this team. Doesn't mean he's not streaky, but man, there's something about him in big games. I would test out Cason Wallace, because there's some numbers about Cason Wallace. Like, whenever he's in the corner and the shot clock's going down, he does not shoot the ball very well, which is a very small sample size and a very weird thing to criticize. But those kind of shots, it's like the only pressurized shots in the regular season that you can point to and try to translate. So I'd see what Cason Wallace can do, because Cason Wallace has also elevated his game as a guy to play off the catch and to play with the ball in his hands. So it's a long way to get to, I would say, try Cason Wallace, and it might backfire, but hey, you got to do something. You got to try something if you're Memphis.
Do you think that the Grizzlies get this series competitive at all? Do you think it's a one again, OKC in 5? Do you think the Thunder sweep in 4? Most of the early previews I've read are not respecting Memphis in any way, shape, or form. The reason that I am understanding of that is not for the same reason that they probably feel that way. They think that the Grizzlies collapsed at the end, which is true. The reason that I think that Memphis will, I think I'm going to go OKC in 5. The reason that I think Memphis won't make it more competitive is because they don't have Brandon Clark and they don't have Jalen Wells. If those two guys were healthy, especially Wells, to be honest with you, now that they use Edey the way that they use him, but I like Clark too, of course. I think it's a more competitive series. People forget that the Grizzlies were literally the 2 seed 2 months ago. So this is not the 8 seed Miami Heat going against the 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a Grizzlies team that has the talent to compete with anybody. OKC almost certainly just has more, but does it make you nervous at all that the reality that Memphis, again, literally it was OKC and it was Memphis just as recently as February 14th?
Yeah, I think that it does in the sense of just respecting, especially the top of this roster. But like you mentioned, Brandon Clark and Jalen Wells, if those guys were healthy, if it was literally just a Coach Jenkins problem, everyone else was healthy, they just lost too many games, and then like that's why they fell, quote unquote. Of course, obviously did fall to the 8th seed. Then I would be much more concerned. But since the trade deadline, for one reason or another, the Grizzlies have lost 4 rotational players. It's like that's really going to hurt them in a series against the deepest team in the NBA. And to me, I think that they deserve more respect than like a blanket statement of a sweep or picking in them in 5, because even their regular season series where the Thunder went 4-0 and they outscored them by 18.8 points per game in that regular season series, neither team was fully healthy in any of those 4 matchups. Every time somebody was missing someone, and it was from each side, somebody missing someone in each game. So like that doesn't give you a ton of detail. What I think will happen is the Grizzlies will win at home. That they will get this series to 5, but I think that they all look very similar to Tuesday, where the Grizzlies took on the Warriors and they got down big, and then they stormed back, and then it got late, it got close late, and then who's going to make the break happen? And you'd lean with who's been the best team in the NBA this season to make that break happen late, but it's going to be a very competitive gentleman's sweep, I think.
I agree with that completely. That's actually exactly how I'm going to put it on our show as well. So I think you nailed it. It's going to be competitive, but the Thunder are the better team right now, to be sure.
Joe, this has been a lot of fun. Go check out Locked On Grizzlies all throughout the NBA playoffs. Check out Locked On Thunder as well. Joe, I hope that we have a long enough series to do this again and re-crossover on a more normal day. But thank you again for joining us. Thank you for having me on your show. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.